The cameras flash so fast that the light, it just becomes this solid, blinding white wall.
Oh, yeah, it's like a total sensory overload.
Totally. You step out of your car, and suddenly the crowd just freezes. Everyone is looking at you.
But they aren't actually seeing you.
Exactly. They're seeing an image, a character, a projection. And right then, in the middle of all that deafening, chaotic noise, you have this terrifying realization.
That you don't know what's real anymore.
Right. You don't know what's real, and you don't know what is completely fake. So what do?
I mean, panic.
You drop everything, you flee the country, you head deep into the Peruvian desert without a trace, and you completely change your name.
It sounds like the opening scene of a psychological thriller, honestly. A man just running from his own reflection.
It really does. But it's an entirely real event, and it perfectly captures the strange, distorting gravity of extreme fame. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone.
We've got a really fascinating one today.
We do. We're looking at articles from Pace Magazine, E! News, WIW Magazine, The Independent, and a summary of a massive best-selling memoir.
Our mission today is to explore that intense crucible of public scrutiny. We're unpacking how people actually deal with the blinding light of the public eye.
Because it looks very different depending on who you are. Sometimes it means fleeing to the jungle. Sometimes it means bracing for international backlash on a live stage.
Or navigating modern digital culture wars, right?
Exactly. Or honestly, just walking away for a decade.
But let's start with that dramatic escape to Peru, because it sets the baseline for everything.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So it's 1996. Matthew McConaughey has just starred in A Time to Kill. Now, he had his breakout 3 years earlier in Dazed and Confused, but this was different.
Oh, A Time to Kill was the match in the powder barrel. His fame just explodes overnight.
Right. And he describes the aftermath of that by saying he felt like the world was a mirror. He literally could not tell what was real and what was, bulls anymore. Which makes sense. Sudden fame kind of dissolves normal social contracts, like the usual things we rely on, asking someone their name or what they do for a living. Those just vanished for him.
Everyone already knew who he was.
Exactly. Or at least they projected an identity onto him. He was drowning in validation, but he didn't know if any of it was actually earned.
So his solution is incredibly drastic. He just clicks out. He vanishes to Peru for 22 days with absolutely no electricity.
Wow, 22 days.
Yeah. And he adopts the alias Mateo. He takes almost nothing with him, just his journals, some water, steak, and tequila.
I mean, that's a very specific packing list.
It is. But he went to face his demons. The guilt and shame that hit you when you're handed everything you ever wanted and you realize it doesn't fix what's broken inside you.
Psychologically, that's basically an intentional ego death. He called it an initiation period.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how hard it is for any of us to just sit quietly without checking our phones. When he isolated himself, those daily distractions faded and the anxieties finally caught up.
And he admitted that for the first half of the trip, he hated his own company. Like the first 12 days were, in his words, wonky.
But he didn't pull the parachute. He stayed until day 12, which is when the big psychological breakthrough happened.
Right, because sudden fame is a sensory overload. You can't even hear your own heartbeat. So this trip was essentially a sensory deprivation tank for his ego.
He had to strip away the external input to remember what his own baseline sounded like.
Exactly. And the resolution to this trip is so poignant. He talks about these tearful goodbyes with the locals. They were hugging, genuinely sad to part ways.
And they only knew him as Mateo, right?
Yes, that's the defining detail. They only knew Mateo.
That was the validation he needed. The connection was based on the man standing right in front of them, not the movie star on some billboard.
But, the internet is rarely romantic about Hollywood vision quests. When this story resurfaced, the viral reactions were completely merciless.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, people were mocking it, calling it a LRP, a live-action roleplay. One viral post argued it's a pseudo-spiritual thing you can only do if you're wealthy enough that no one can tell you you're out of touch.
Well, outlets like Bro Bible really brought up that intersection of privilege and personal growth. Treating a developing nation as your temporary spiritual retreat is a profound luxury.
Some critics called it poverty tourism for the soul.
Right, but dismissing it entirely ignores his reality. The psychological distress was real to him, and the cure worked. It was incredibly privileged, but also deeply necessary for his mental survival.
For sure. And that's not even the wildest part. That Peruvian exile wasn't the last time he'd flee to the desert to escape the noise.
Really? He did it again?
Oh, yeah. It became the blueprint for his life. Years later, when he wrote his memoir, Greenlights, he sought isolation again. 52 days in the desert without electricity.
Wow. 52 days just poring over 75 years of his diaries.
Exactly. And out of that isolation came the core metaphor of his book. Life is a series of traffic lights. Red and yellow lights are the obstacles, but if you have patience, they eventually turn green.
Serendipitous moments, basically.
Right. But I have to ask you and the listener, does true personal growth require this level of extreme isolation? I mean, fleeing to a desert is a luxury unavailable to most of us.
Oh, absolutely. The luxury of time and space is immense. Most people can't pause their lives for 2 months, but the actual application of his philosophy is grounded in his career choices.
How so?
Well, he didn't just wait for green lights. He actively engineered a massive red light. During the height of his career, he was making millions starring in rom-coms like The Wedding Planner and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Huge hits, yeah.
But he felt creatively hollow, so he walked away. He relocated to Texas and risked his career by waiting for authentic dramatic roles. He refused to work until he found them.
That's a terrifying leap of faith. There's a great quote from him in our sources. The arrow doesn't seek the target draws the arrow.
He controlled his present to ensure his future freedom. And it paid off. He won an Oscar, and now he's returning to theaters in The Rivals of Mziah King.
But, McConaughey had the privilege to flee the noise. What happens when you can't run away?
When you have to stand right in the center of public fury.
Exactly. And if you're loving these twists, make sure you're subscribed because we've got even crazier stories ahead.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button.
So let's talk about the Eurovision Song Contest, specifically Israel's contestant, Noam Betten. The stakes here are entirely different.
Completely different.
And I want to set a strict rule for us right now. We are impartially reporting on this segment. We are not taking any sides regarding the boycott, the protests, Israel, or the EBU.
Absolutely. We are just examining how immense public pressure is managed. Just reporting the facts.
Right. So Betten's entry faced massive pushback due to ongoing global tensions regarding Gaza. 5 countries actually boycotted the event entirely.
And it wasn't just a quiet boycott. There were incredibly vocal protests anticipated during the live broadcast.
Right. Betten and his team had to prepare to perform a ballad called Michelle in an arena that might be actively hostile. The psychological toll of that is staggering.
How do you even maintain your composure when thousands of people might be screaming at you?
Their preparation was wild. Instead of seeking quiet, Betten and his team spent months rehearsing to the sound of fake boos and heckles.
Wait, really? They piped in fake booing?
Yes. They synthesized hatred into his training sessions. It's like a boxer purposely getting hit in the face during sparring so they don't flinch in the ring. Except the stakes are global politics.
Synthesizing the noise to build armor, that's a surreal adaptation to public scrutiny. And it highlights a glaring contradiction with the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU.
Yeah, they constantly claim the event is apolitical, right?
Exactly. Their deputy director general said they aren't the UN and don't make political decisions, but they explicitly excluded Russia in 2022 following the invasion of Ukraine.
So the claim that Eurovision is this pristine apolitical vacuum is complicated, to say the least,
Yeah.
and the tension totally overshadowed the music.
Oh, completely. Predicted favorites from Finland, like Linda Lampenius and Pete Parkkonen, were just sidelined in the global conversation.
Because the focus shifted from art to the geopolitical spectacle. But for Betten, the official EBU stance didn't matter. He couldn't retreat to silence. He had to turn the noise up to 10 in rehearsal.
So that the real noise couldn't break him. And reports say that despite some protests during performances, his final performance went smoother than anticipated.
The mental endurance required for that is immense. But later in the episode, we'll talk about a shocking twist with a 3,000-year-old mythological woman.
Oh, the digital crucible.
Yes, because the pressure of the public eye isn't just felt on live stages. It often manifests entirely digitally now. Casting decisions can spark international culture wars.
Which brings us to Christopher Nolan casting Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy in his upcoming blockbuster, The Odyssey.
Right, and Elon Musk immediately took to X to complain heavily about this casting decision.
And again, absolute neutrality here. We're just reporting the arguments on both sides.
Exactly. So Musk and right-wing commentators claim this is a DEI ploy to curry favor with the Academy's 2024 diversity rules. They argue it desecrates Homer's work.
But then Universal Studios and left-wing defenders point to the massive success of behind-the-scenes inclusion programs.
Like the ones used on Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Right, which completely swept the Oscars, winning Best Picture and Best Director. They argue broadening the talent pool elevates the whole production.
But the factual irony of this whole historical accuracy debate is just wild. Euripides wrote in 412 BC that Helen actually hatched from an egg.
Wait, an egg?
Yeah, because Zeus took the form of a swan to sleep with her mother. So how exactly do we define historical accuracy for a mythological character who supposedly hatched from a swan egg?
Right, shouldn't she be wearing feathers then? It perfectly illustrates the absurdity of these digital outrage cycles.
Totally. It's ancient mythology. It was an oral tradition, inherently fluid. But modern digital scrutiny is rigid and unforgiving.
It projects modern cultural anxieties onto ancient texts. It's like a global homeowners association dispute amplified by algorithms.
That's such a good way to put it.
Uh-huh.
So we've seen stars flee the noise, endure the noise, and generate the noise online, but there's one final way to handle the spotlight.
Quietly ignoring it until you have something real to say.
Exactly. Let's talk about Kenneth Lonergan. Brilliant playwright and director, he won the Best Original Screenplay Oscar in 2016 for Manchester by the Sea.
A massive, career-defining peak. Usually that's when you strike, right? You launch a production company, get on every social platform, monetize your relevance.
But Lonergan rejected the playbook entirely. He just stopped making movies for 10 years.
A whole decade.
Yeah. He focused on theater, took a few small acting roles here and there. He completely removed himself from the cinematic spotlight and the digital culture wars.
And now, 10 years later, he's finally making a new movie called Tomorrow is a Drag.
And because he waited, the industry is bending over backwards for him. He's got a stacked cast. Adam Driver, who starred in his play Hold On to Me, Darling, Aubrey Plaza, Matthew Broderick, and Vanessa Kirby.
The contrast there is profound. You have McConaughey going off-grid to survive, Betten piping in fake booze, the exhausting digital battles over the Odyssey.
And Lonergan just represents the sheer power of withholding. In a culture obsessed with constant visibility, choosing to remain unseen for a decade might be the ultimate flex of artistic control.
He managed the noise by simply refusing to acknowledge it.
Which really brings all these threads together. Whether you're retreating to a desert, piping fake booze into a rehearsal room, weathering a digital storm, or choosing total silence, the core challenge is the same.
How do you protect your inner voice when the outside world is screaming at you?
That is the defining question of this deep dive. From the Peruvian desert to the synthesized booze of Eurovision, the digital battlegrounds of Hollywood casting, and the quiet patience of a playwright.
It's all about how we manage that noise.
So I want to turn this over to you, the listener. How do you manage the noise in your own life, whether that's office politics, social media pressure, or family expectations?
Yeah, we all face it. Finding a way to unplug is a modern survival skill.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed these twists and turns today, remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got so much more coming.
We really do.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. If you had to strip away your job title, your digital footprint, and even your own name for 22 days, who is the Mateo that would be left behind? Would you even recognize them?